Welcome to another edition of Disability and You. I'm Ganesha Singh. As usual, I'll be with you for approximately half of an hour. On this edition, my focus will be on assistive technology. Recently, we observed World Assistive Technology a Day, and it's a day designated to raise awareness on what is assistive technology and the benefits of such technology on the lives of persons with disabilities. To discuss this topic with me is Rosemarie Ramitt, a disability rights advocate, a teacher of the blind and visually impaired, but also she's an assistive technology consultant, and she would have implemented a number of programs, developed a number of training manuals, both for Guyana and within the Caribbean in the field of assistive technology. So, Rosemary, welcome to Disability and You. You're no stranger to these studios because you wear many hats. But today we want to discuss assistive technology. So, tell us what exactly is assistive technology.
All right, so thank you for having me on your program once again. So, assistive technology is any tool or device. It can be software or hardware device that enables people with disabilities to live an independent life. So, any piece of technology, whether software or hardware, that helps an individual who has a disability to be able to live more independently and to enhance their daily functioning. That is what we refer to as assistive technology.
So, what are some examples so that we can, get some clarity and persons can have a better understanding?
Sure. Some common examples that people may see every day would be wheelchairs, um, support canes, white canes, hearing aids, any smartphone or smart device that supports an individual with a disability. Those are all considered as assistive
So, like
technologies.
the simple talking watches that persons who are blind use, that's assistive tech too?
Yes.
So, those simple gadgets are also assistive technology. Because
Yes.
I'm sure when most people hear assistive technology, they think of it as being so complex. But it's, go ahead.
Yes, actually, there are three levels of, or three categories of assistive technologies. You have the low tech, mid tech, and high tech. So, the high tech is what people may often think of when they hear assistive technologies, but there are low tech options as well. For example, when you look at pencil grips, for example. So, persons who may have dexterity challenges or fine motor skill challenges, they rely on, a little tool that is placed on a pencil or a pen
The
to
rubber grips,
enable
yeah.
them, right, to enable them to grip the device better. Those are low tech assistive technologies as well.
hmm And what about the mid tech? What are some examples of it?
Mid-tech would be like the white canes, or anything that does not necessarily require electricity to work. Those are considered mid-tech. And of course, the high-tech would be those that require electricity in order to operate, or those specialized devices such as like a braille machine or a hearing aid, for example, um,
Mhm.
in order to operate. Yeah.
All right. How widely available are these pieces of technology to persons with disabilities in Guyana?
The availability differs according to the person's earning capacity, and also how close they are to the capital, where you'll have access to more assistive technologies. But overall, assistive technologies are known to be very expensive, and many persons with disabilities are unable to cover the cost for these assistive technologies. So they'll rely on, for example, government funding or subsidies to be able to purchase these devices, which is something that happens in developed countries where the procurement of these technologies are done by is done by the federal government. So, like in the US, for example, the states would provide individuals with a white cane, braille machine, their cell phone, laptops, and so on. But in middle and lower income countries, what you'll find is that only roughly about 10% of people with disabilities will have access to assistive technologies.
And in Guyana, we're seeing an improvement because now the government is providing wheelchairs and
Yes.
prosthetic limbs, hearing aids, and those things free of
Yes,
cost.
yes. So those are definitely becoming more accessible, and then you have more persons with disabilities in Guyana who are employed either on a full time or a part time basis, and so they're in a better position, financial position, to purchase the devices that they will need in order to effectively function.
So, Rosemary, you mentioned the word technology and assistive technology. That's what we're dealing with, really. In some instances, persons can't just pick up a piece of this technology or a piece of the technology and use it. They need training. So
Yes.
explain to us, because I mentioned in the introduction that you've developed many training manuals and so forth in the field of assistive tech. Explain to us how does that work and what category would require specialized training? What category of assistive tech?
All right, so it's interesting one that you brought up training because that is a part of the definition of assistive technology. Because when you look at what assistive technology is and what it entails, it also entails training and maintenance and repairs of the devices. So, coming back to the training, as you mentioned, I've done work in the various regions. I've worked with special education needs teachers to introduce them to assistive technology and how they can use it in the classroom with children who have different types of
Well, we'll
disabilities.
look at the different sectors in the next half of the program.
Yes. But as more specifically to the question that you asked, you have persons who are blind or visually impaired who will require specialized training.
To do what exactly?
So they'll need specialized training to learn how to use computers with screen reading softwares, their cell
And that
phones.
screen reading software is basically what we call is the software that makes the computer talk.
Yes, that gives audio feedback on any device. Also, how to use different appliances within the home, how to make it more accessible, and also how to use the white cane, training them on how to use the white cane. Also, you have persons who have communication challenges. There are these augmentative and alternative communication devices, just a big term that really means anything that supports an individual to communicate.
And
So you
that's
also
people
have
with autism and persons that are
who are
nonverbal.
deaf and, yes, who are nonverbal and so on.
But how widely available are these training programs or initiatives?
Um, while it's not done in a structured or a systematic way, I know that through various funding agencies, such as like the Office of the Prime Minister, UNICEF, etc., they would have funded programs in the training of assistive technologies.
And that includes Basic Need Trust Fund, Board of Industrial
Training,
Training,
yes.
and a few other agencies that would have funded training. And even through the Ghana Council of Organizations for Persons with Disabilities Orientation Mobility Program, that's funded by ExxonMobil. There is assistive technology
Yes,
training,
there's a component.
yeah, for persons who are blind and visually impaired.
Yes.
Rosemary, we discussed before we pause for that break what is assistive technology, some examples of assistive technology, but explain to us how it's used on a daily basis to ensure that someone with a disability can be independent. And
Okay.
you started to discuss earlier about the teachers and how you work with them. Tell us, how can the teacher or an educator use assistive technology to make their content more accessible and make the learning process more inclusive for children with disabilities?
Okay, so I'll start by giving some examples of how people with disabilities themselves use assistive technology. So, first, you have in order to access information. We know that we have the internet where we often go to access any kind of information. And obviously, with the expansion of artificial intelligence, there is this wide world out there where persons can go to access information. So assistive technologies makes that available for persons with disabilities. When you look at someone who is blind, for example, because that's the area in which I work mostly, when they go online to access information, their screen reading software, such as Jobs Access with Speech or JAWS, enables them to be able to read the news, for example, keep up to date with current affairs, apply online for a job, or study online because the learning management platforms are also accessible. So they're able to use the assistive technology to be able to access information online. And really, when you have access to information, the possibilities are endless for what you can learn and the things with which you can engage online. Additionally, many persons use technology to be able to function in their homes.
But before we go that, information you mentioned access information online, but also offline information can be accessed to creating, manipulating documents, and so forth.
Yes, well, anything that you can do on a laptop, um, as someone who's sighted, you can also do it as a person who's blind using the screen reading software. So you're looking at like creating documents, word processing using the entire Microsoft Office. It's now 365, Office 365. Creating Google Forms, accessing Google Classroom, using Excel, Google Sheets, all of these different software options that are available, that becomes accessible via assistive technologies.
Mm-hmm. And you were mentioning the assistive tech in the home now.
Yes. So there are many assistive technologies that are available that enable people to live independently in their homes. With the growth in smart devices and smart appliances, such as the Alexa, for example, you have the Google Home. Um, those devices make life much easier in the home, and this is not only for people with disabilities, but there are many benefits to people with disabilities. For example, you have the smart power strips, you have the smart bulbs, the smart plugs, and so as long as you're able to connect those to the internet, and as long as you have access to internet, you can turn on and off your lights in the home just by using a verbal prompt, right? Such as like Alexa, turn off the lights, and so on. And so it removes that need to have to physically do it. So for people who may have mobility challenges, they can turn on and off the refrigerator, the microwave, if they have electric kettles. All of that can be done just by setting up the smart devices in and around the home.
Mm-hmm.
Also, for people who are blind and visually impaired, there are a lot of devices that are now coming as talking devices. So persons may have experience with this, for example, like when you go to the hospital and you do the blood pressure test, there are many of the testing kits or machines that are now talking. So, that person who may need to test their pressure, they're able to hear the reading. You have audible sugar testing kits. You have talking bathroom skills, talking kitchen skills, thermometers, you name it in the home, and they're talking devices equivalent to those. So it really helps to make that person more independent in their home. Like other examples would include things like there are labels in Braille that you can place on your medication or different items around the home. There are also specific tags that would read out, medication names and other like containers or bottles that you may have around the home. And this is not only for persons who are blind, but this would also be helpful to persons with autism or, anyone who may have communication challenges or reading challenges. So yeah, that's
Uh,
just a few examples.
Rosemary, let's discuss you as a person who is visually impaired and how you use technology. Let's start with your education journey. How you were able to use technology first to write your CXC and then to go to university. And mind you, graduating with a distinction. That is something we must, it's not to highlight the success, but also to show that technology enabled you to achieve that. Because without the technology, yes, you were intelligent, you would not have been able to be on par with your peers who were fully sighted. So explain that education journey because people, I'm sure they'll have a much better understanding of how this thing actually works to hear it, how we can make your life much easier.
All right, so let me just give a quick background. After I lost my vision at age 13, I dropped out of school because obviously my parents and I did not know of any support or educational support that I could have received at that time. And so through a training that was done at the Ghana Society for the Blind, that was through the One Laptop Per Family program back in 2012. I accessed training on how to use JAWS, which is the screen reading software on the laptop. So I received a laptop through OLPF, and Ganesh, you were the instructor at that time,
Yes.
and completing several weeks of training. I was able to learn how to use the computer and type and all of those things. And then in 2013, again, you spearheaded an initiative where persons who were blind and visually impaired would be able to access the CXC curriculum electronically. So this is where I want to mention that way before everything went digital, you guys at the Ghana Society for the Blind were already spearheading initiatives that delivered the CXC curriculum electronically. So all
And that
of
was
my
12 years ago
notes,
when
yes,
people were barely thinking of online learning.
yes. All of my notes, all of my books, textbooks, and so on were on my laptop, and I studied by, reading it, hearing the notes, and also doing research online, and doing additional studying and all of those things. Um, when it came time to write the examination,
That's a CXC.
that's a CXC examination. My exams were loaded onto a laptop by exams division, and I typed all of my responses. So I completed my exams using the computer.
And using assistive technology.
Yes, and using assistive technology.
And that has continued until now.
Yes, so moving on to Sarapata College, the same thing. That's how I completed my work there. University, the same thing. We started using Moodle and everything went online, so it became a bit easier to access information and to be able to study. And I use assistive technology a lot in my work, and if I could quickly share,
Definitely,
uh,
definitely.
I always said so. It might seem like a long, complicated process, but this is how I get my work done. So, I use an app on my phone that converts text from an image. It uses AI to convert the text from the image, and I'm able to place it into a Word document. So when I'm working with a student in their classroom, I'll get a photo taken of the notes on the board, convert it on my phone, and upload it to my Dropbox, where I'll then access it on my laptop. And I will then get that note to the student.
And you work with blind and visually impaired students?
Yes. So they're able to get all of their notes on their laptop, and I can also scan the textbooks. And with the AI support now, you have thorough description or detailed description of any images, any charts, any graphs, any diagrams that the student may have to access. There is, like complete access to a description of those images now. So, you know, AI has really been helping us a lot with the work that we do.
It's revolutionary for people who are blind.
Yes, definitely.
And you're a major fan and promoter of assistive technology, all the various gadgets. Tell us how you use assistive tech in the home to make your life easier and to be much more independent.
Well, as I mentioned before with the smart devices, I have a few Amazon Echo Dots around my home. That's the Alexa device. I have a few of those around my home. So I'm able to just use my voice to, turn on and off certain appliances.
And that's connected to smart plugs and smart points and those things.
Yes, smart power strips. I use those, and it helps a lot. And I also use Braille on a lot of the containers and bottles in my home. And I also have these bump dots, which are these small stickers, tactile stickers that you place on like a smooth surface, such as the keypad on the microwave. And I'm able to use my microwave independently, even though it's not like a specialized microwave. Um, and I also cook on my own, I bake on my own, and that's because I specifically work to find appliances or utensils that can be beneficial to me as someone who's blind. Oh, and I also have tactile measuring cups and spoons with braille on it as well.
And your cleaning, how do you go about that?
Um, well, I use a robot vacuum.
And that's easy to operate.
Yes, very easy to set up. It just sounds complicated, to be honest. It's very, very user friendly. And every day my home is swept, and all I have to do is mop. And the vacuum takes care of everything else.
And so you set it on a timer or something like that.
Yes, I set it to vacuum every day.
And what about the use of tech by other persons with disabilities in let's say not just employment or education, but in healthcare, or to access, let's say someone who's ill. You mentioned the glucose monitors that are talking, the blood pressure machines, but how can someone like differentiate their pills and things like that?
Well, there are different apps available. And the beauty about assistive technology is that it also includes software. So many persons are moving towards mobile apps or creating mobile apps that will enable them to do.
So it's no longer these
to do
standalone
these.
devices.
Right. So you don't necessarily have to purchase a separate device to do these things. You can download the apps. Many of them are free of cost. And as I mentioned, AI is also, being integrated into a lot of these mobile apps. So it's making access to things like recognizing your medication, the dosages, and so on. It's making it much easier than it was, say, 5 years ago when you had to purchase a standalone device.
And some years ago, a blind person backpack will be filled with different gadgets.
Yes, with their laptop, their braille note machine, their phones and all the chargers and all of these things. Now all you need is your cell phone and a number of apps on it, and yeah, you're able to live.
And as you said, more persons are now employed with disabilities, so accessing these devices,
Yes.
it's much cheaper. And the other plus is that a lot of the technologies that are being developed are now the mainstream technologies. They are being developed in an inclusive manner
Yes.
so that persons with disabilities can use them without having the need to purchase
To purchase, yes.
expensive specialized equipment.
Yes, and one perfect example of that is the Meta Ray-Ban Smart sunglasses. Um, they are smart glasses specifically designed for people who are blind, but again, extremely
It's like
expensive, like
3,000 US
three
dollars.
thousand to $5,000 for these devices. And so Ray-Bans partner with Meta and they created their own smart glasses that uses AI as well. And it takes a photo, you can make calls and all of these things on it. And the blind community quickly learned that hey, this is actually very useful to us because you can just tell it to take a photo and describe what's in front of you. And it does that, right? Like it recognizes money, it can tell you if there's someone standing in front of you, if there's a sign, it can read the sign, it could read menus. And if you need assistance from someone who's sighted, you can just use the glasses to make a WhatsApp video call, and the person on the other end can be able to see through the camera on the sunglasses, right? So like you don't have to walk around holding up your phone anymore. You can use the sunglasses, and that was just something that was a secondary benefit to creating.
Because it wasn't created for
No,
blind
it
people.
was not created for persons who are blind.
Rosemarie, I want to thank you very much for sharing with us on assistive technology as we observe World Assistive Technology Day. And assistive technology has transformed the lives of persons with disabilities. It's made our lives much more independent. And as we discuss, as these gadgets become more inclusive, the mainstream gadgets, things are becoming much more accessible to persons with disabilities. You don't have to pay all of these prohibitive costs or incur all those prohibitive costs. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll be back next time for another edition of Disability and You. Do remember, disability rights are human rights.